I'm 65 years old now, sitting by this fire in the year 1908, and I'm about to tell you a story that changed everything. A story about a rope, a woman, and the night I stopped being dead inside. Do you believe in fate? I didn't. Not for 8 long years. Not until that October night in 1886, when I found a woman hanging from a rope in the middle of a snowstorm. But let me start at the beginning, so you understand what kind of man I was back then. My name is Caleb Thorne. Born in the Tennessee mountains, raised on cornbread and hard lessons. Fought for the Union Army as a scout during the war between the states. After the war, I drifted west, like so many men did, looking for something I couldn't name. Found work tracking game, guiding wagon trains, staying alive in country that didn't forgive mistakes. Then I met Ayanna. She was Mescalero Apache, daughter of a healer, with eyes that could see straight through to your soul. Her people had made peace with some of the settlers near Fort Stanton, New Mexico. I was passing through, tracking a mountain lion that had killed a rancher's cattle. She was gathering herbs in the high country. We met by a stream where the aspens turned gold in autumn. I won't bore you with the romance, but I will tell you this. Ayanna taught me that love doesn't ask permission from the world. It just is. We married in 1869, had a daughter we named Sage in 1870. That girl was wild as the wind, always climbing trees, catching fish with her bare hands, laughing at danger. She had my height and Ayanna's eyes. We lived in a small cabin near the Sierra Blanca Mountains. I hunted, Ayanna healed the sick from both white and Apache communities, and Sage grew tall and fearless. For 8 years, I thought I understood happiness. Then came 1878, the year everything burned. I was out tracking elk, 3 days' ride from home. When I came back, I smelled the smoke before I saw it. Black columns rising against a blue sky. My heart knew before my mind did. The cabin was ash. The peace village where Ayanna had been delivering medicine was destroyed. 47 people dead. Women, children, elders who'd never held a weapon. I found them together. Ayanna had thrown herself over Sage, trying to shield her. Both shot in the back. I knelt in the ashes and screamed until my voice gave out. The army said it was a justified response to an Apache raid, said the village was harboring hostiles. The officer who led the attack was a young captain named Vernon Blackwell. He stood there in his clean uniform, watching me dig 2 graves on the hillside, and said, "Unfortunate casualties of war, Mr. Thorne. These things happen." I buried my wife and daughter on a hill overlooking what used to be our home. I stood over those graves and made a promise. I would never let myself care about another human being again, because caring meant losing, and I couldn't survive that pain twice. I sold everything, took my guns and my horse, and rode into the high country. Found a spot deep in the ponderosa pine forest, 8,000 feet up, where winter came early and stayed late. Built a new cabin with my own hands. Made it so I could see anyone approaching from 3 sides. Made it strong enough to last. And then I shut the door on the world. For 8 years I lived alone. Talked to my horse Ash more than I talked to people. Went to town maybe twice a year for supplies. Spoke only what was necessary. Left before anyone could ask questions. Kept my beard long, my hair longer, my eyes down. Chopped wood, hunted game, mended my gear, and every night sat by the fire holding a small cloth doll that Sage used to carry everywhere. Every night I poured 2 cups of whiskey, one for me, one for the memory of Ayanna. And every night I told myself I was fine with this silence. I was lying. Now, let me tell you about that October night in 1886. The night everything changed. It started with wind. Not the normal mountain wind that whispers through the pines, but the kind that screams, the kind that warns of something coming. Snow had started falling at sunset, big wet flakes that turned the world white within an hour. By midnight, it was a full blizzard, the kind that could kill a man if he got caught in it. I was sitting by my stone fireplace, sharpening my hunting knife on a whetstone. The rhythm was hypnotic, familiar. Steel on stone, steel on stone. Outside, the wind hammered against the walls like fists trying to get in. Then I heard it. Not the wind, not a tree branch breaking under snow. Something else. A creaking sound, rhythmic and slow. The sound wood makes when a rope swings under weight. I stopped sharpening, listened hard. There it was again. Creak, creak, creak. My cabin was a quarter-mile from the old cabin site, the place where Ayanna and Sage died. I never went there. Hadn't been back in 8 years. But that sound was coming from that direction. I stood up, grabbed my Winchester rifle and a kerosene lantern, pulled on my sheepskin coat, the one with the fur collar that Ayanna had sewn for me back when she still breathed. Stepped out into the storm. The cold hit like a fist. Snow stung my face, got in my eyes, made everything a blur of white and shadow. I held the lantern high and followed that sound through the trees. Creak, creak, creak. It took me 10 minutes to reach the old site. All that remained of the cabin were some foundation stones buried under snow. But the gate still stood, 2 posts with a crossbeam, something I'd built to mark the entrance, back when there was something to enter. Lightning flashed, turning the world electric white for just a moment. And I saw her, a woman, hanging from the crossbeam, rope around her neck, feet kicking weakly at empty air. Long black hair plastered to her face with snow and rain. Buckskin dress soaked through, clinging to a frame so thin I could see ribs. Arms tied behind her back. She was still alive, barely. Each gust of wind tightened the rope, dragged another rasping sound from her throat. I stood there frozen, not from the cold, from the shock of it, from the choice presenting itself. A voice in my head, the voice that had kept me alive for 8 years in this isolation, said, "Walk away. This isn't your fight. She's Apache. They took everything from you. Let the storm finish what someone else started." But then another voice spoke, Ayanna's voice, soft as morning light. "If that was me hanging there, would you want someone to walk away?" And I saw Sage's face overlapping with the woman's, saw my daughter kicking at air, fighting for one more breath. I moved without deciding to move, dropped the rifle, scrambled up the gatepost, boots slipping on ice-covered wood, pulled my knife from my belt. My hands were shaking. From cold, maybe. From something else, probably. The rope was thick, military grade. I sawed at it with everything I had. The woman's eyes opened, just slits, looking at me without recognition or hope. Just the animal instinct to survive. The rope snapped. She fell into my arms, lighter than I expected. Her whole body was cold, skin like ice through the wet buckskin. I could feel her ribs, her heartbeat faint and irregular. When I pressed my ear to her chest, I heard a whisper of breath. Still alive. Just barely. I wrapped her in my coat, held her against my chest to share body heat, and ran. Ran through snow that was now knee-deep, ran until my lungs burned and my legs screamed. Back to the cabin, back to warmth and light and the possibility of saving this stranger who'd crashed into my solitary life. Inside, I laid her by the fireplace, pulled off the soaked buckskin dress, wrapped her in wool blankets I kept in a chest, built up the fire until it roared, heated water, and dripped it onto her lips, one drop at a time. Her throat was purple with bruising, swollen so badly I didn't know if she'd ever speak again. There was a cut on her left forearm, not from the rope, but from a knife. Recent, still bleeding slowly. I cleaned the wound, wrapped it in cloth torn from an old shirt, applied a poultice of herbs I'd learned from Ayana, herbs that reduced swelling and fought infection, rubbed her hands and feet to bring back circulation. And then I sat back and waited. Just me, this unconscious woman, and the storm howling outside like all the demons of hell were scratching at the door. I looked at her face in the firelight. Young, maybe late 20s, Apache, clearly, from the high cheekbones and the way her hair fell. A small scar on her chin, old and faded. Hands that were calloused from work, not soft like a woman kept idle. On my shelf sat Sage's cloth doll. In that moment, I imagined my daughter grown, imagined her at this age, and my heart cracked open just a little. I poured myself whiskey, drank it in one swallow, poured another, looked at this woman who I'd saved without meaning to, this woman who'd shattered 8 years of careful isolation in the space of 10 minutes. And I said out loud to the empty air where Ayana's spirit might have lingered, "Well, I guess we got company tonight." Then, because the absurdity of it hit me, I added, "First visitor in 8 years, and she didn't even knock." I almost smiled. Almost. The woman's breathing steadied. Not strong, but steady. She'd live through the night, probably. Whether she'd want to, after whatever had been done to her, that was another question. I dozed in my chair, rifle across my lap, jerking awake every time the fire crackled or the wind gusted. Around 3 in the morning, I heard her move. Her eyes opened, dark eyes, black as river stones, moving from the ceiling to the fire to me. I saw confusion first, then fear, then something that looked like despair. She tried to sit up, gasped in pain from her throat, fell back. I held up my hands, showing empty palms, spoke quietly, the way you'd speak to a spooked horse. "Easy now. You're safe. For tonight, at least." She stared at me, tried to speak, couldn't, winced at the pain. I handed her the cup of warm water, helped her take small sips. After a minute, she managed a whisper, raw and broken, but understandable. "Who are you?" "Name's Caleb Thorne," I said. "I found you hanging from a rope, cut you down, brought you here." She processed this. Why? That was a good question. I thought about lying, about giving some noble reason, but I was too tired for lies. Because my wife would never have forgiven me if I didn't. Her eyes went to the photograph on the mantel, daguerreotype of Ayana and Sage, the only picture I owned. Taken by a traveling photographer in 1877, a year before they died. "Your wife," she whispered. "She was—" "Apache," I finished. "Mescalero. Name was Ayana. That's our daughter Sage beside her. They've been dead 8 years. Understanding flickered in her eyes. Not just understanding, but something deeper. Shared grief. "My name," she said, voice barely audible, "is Kiona." The name hung in the air between us. It meant brown hills in her language. I knew that much. Ayana had taught me some Apache words, though I'd spoken none of them in 8 years. "Kiona," I repeated. "Can you tell me who did this to you?" Her face hardened. She reached slowly for a leather pouch still attached to her belt, fingers moving carefully, opened it, and pulled out papers, folded and sealed with red military wax. "Soldiers," she whispered. "They wanted this." I took the papers, unfolded them by the firelight. Military ledgers, lists of transactions, dates, amounts, names of villages, weapons sold, land seized, women taken. And there, in neat handwriting at the bottom of one page, Captain Vernon Blackwell, Fort Stanton, New Mexico Territory. The name hit me like a bullet to the chest. My vision narrowed. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the papers. "Blackwell," I said, and my voice came out like gravel. Kiona nodded. "You know him?" "He killed my family," I said. 1878. Burned the peace village where they lived. Called it justified military action. I looked back at the ledgers, forced myself to focus through the rage. There it was, 1878, April 15th, Sibecue Creek Operation. 47 hostiles eliminated. 3 white casualties, acceptable losses. And in the margin, in Blackwell's own hand, women and children resisted, all neutralized per protocol. "My wife," I said slowly, "and my daughter." They were those acceptable losses. Kiona's eyes filled with something that wasn't quite tears. Apache women were taught not to show such weakness, but I saw the grief there anyway. "My sister Naylan died in one of his raids," she said. "I was 19. I hid in a root cellar while they killed her. I've carried that shame ever since." We sat in silence for a moment, two people bound by the same monster. "These papers," I said, "where'd you get them?" She told me. She'd been working as a translator and healer at Fort Stanton, essentially a hostage to keep her people from uprising. 3 weeks ago, she'd been treating Blackwell for a shoulder wound, some gunfight with local militia. He'd been drunk, careless, left his office unlocked. She'd seen the ledgers on his desk, couldn't help herself, started reading, discovered everything. The weapons sales to Apache raiders, the staged attacks, the land fraud, the trafficking of women to brothels in Tombstone and Tucson. Years of crimes, all documented in his own handwriting. She'd stolen the ledgers the next night. Been running for 2 days when his men caught her in a canyon. They'd strung her up to make it look like suicide. Said an Apache woman couldn't handle reservation life, chose to end it. But the storm had come early, forced them to take shelter. They'd left her hanging, planning to come back at dawn to cut her down and stage the scene properly. "They're coming," she whispered, "at sunrise. They'll kill you for helping me." She paused, then added quietly, "Blackwell has a son, Dylan, 12 years old. I've seen him at the fort." I looked at her. "He brings his boy to a military fort?" "Uses him. The boy translates sometimes, runs errands. But I've seen the bruises on his arms, the way he flinches when his father raises his voice. That's not a son. That's a tool." I said nothing, but the information settled cold in my gut. A man who'd use his own child as a servant was capable of anything. Outside, the storm was dying. Through the window, I could see the first gray hints of dawn. I stood up, went to a wooden chest in the corner, opened it. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. My Winchester rifle, a Colt Peacemaker revolver, boxes of ammunition, bear traps, iron stakes, even a few sticks of dynamite I'd kept from my mining days. I'd sworn I'd never touch these things again. That oath died the moment I'd cut the rope from Kiona's neck. "Can you shoot?" I asked. She nodded. "I can learn." I turned to look at her. This woman who'd nearly died. This woman who carried proof of crimes that spanned years. This woman who reminded me of my wife, my daughter, everything I'd lost. 8 years ago, I said quietly, if you'd come to my door, I might have turned you away, might have let old hate make my choices. "And now?" she asked. I loaded the Winchester, the familiar weight settling into my hands like coming home. "Now," I said, "I figure maybe I've been dead long enough." Outside, in the growing light, we heard it. The sound I'd been half expecting. Horses, multiple horses, coming up the trail toward my cabin. Kiona stood, wrapped in the blanket, eyes wide, but not afraid. "What do we do?" I handed her the Colt, showed her how to hold it. "They want to fight?" I said. "Then we give them one they won't forget." Through the window, I counted. 12 horses, maybe 15 men. Military uniforms, visible even in the dim dawn light. And leading them, sitting tall in the saddle with that officer's bearing I remembered too well, was Captain Vernon Blackwell. He'd aged some in 8 years, harder lines around the mouth, gray at the temples. But I'd know that face anywhere. The face of the man who'd killed my family and called it acceptable. His voice carried clear in the cold morning air. "Thorne, I know you're in there. Send out the girl and I might let you live." I looked at Kiona. She looked at me. No words needed. We both knew what was about to happen. I jacked around into the Winchester's chamber. The sound was loud in the quiet cabin, final as a judge's gavel. "When this starts," I told her, "don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed." She nodded, gripping the Colt with both hands. I took one last look at Sage's cloth doll on the shelf, whispered, "This one's for you, little girl." Then I stepped to the window, rifle ready, and waited for Captain Vernon Blackwell to make his final mistake. Outside, his voice came again. 3, 2, and that, friend, is where I'll pause. Because what came next, well, that's a story that needs its own telling. But I'll leave you with this. That morning, October 16th, 1886, was the day I stopped being a ghost. The day I chose to live again, even if living meant fighting. Sometimes fate doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. And sometimes what you need is a reason to remember you're still human. I found mine at the end of a rope, in the middle of a storm, 8 years after I thought my heart had died. Her name was Kiona. And she didn't just save herself that night. She saved me, too. "One!" Blackwell's voice cut through the dawn like a blade. I didn't wait for 2. I fired through the gap in the window shutter. The Winchester kicked against my shoulder, familiar as breathing. The bullet took the soldier next to Blackwell clean through the shoulder, spun him sideways off his horse. He hit the snow hard, red blooming across white like a terrible flower. All hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Windows shattered, wood splintered, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder and pine smoke. Kiona and I dropped to the floor, crawling toward the positions we'd prepared in those frantic 4 hours before dawn. I'd spent those hours teaching her. Not just how to shoot, but how to survive. How to reload without looking. How to breathe through fear. How to make every bullet count because we didn't have enough to waste. She'd been a quick study. Apache women learn fast when survival depends on it. Her grandmother had been a warrior's wife, had fought beside her husband when settlers came for their land. That blood ran in Kiona's veins. Now she proved it. 2 soldiers rushed the side door, thinking they'd caught us off guard. Kiona squeezed the trigger twice from her position by the east window. First shot caught one in the leg, dropped him screaming. Second shot went wide, but close enough that the other man dove for cover. "Good," I shouted over the chaos. "Breathe first, then squeeze." Through my window, I saw 3 more soldiers moving toward the front. They were cautious now, having learned I wasn't going to make it easy. They moved in formation, using trees for cover, professional and disciplined. That's when they hit my first trap. The lead soldier stepped onto the trail I'd scattered with railroad spikes during our preparation. His boot came down wrong. Spike went through leather and bone. His scream cut through the gunfire, high and terrible. His horse reared, panicked, crashed into the horse behind it. Both animals bolted sideways into the brush, riders fighting to control them. Chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. But Blackwell was smart. He pulled his men back out of rifle range, regrouped behind a stand of ponderosas about 60 yards out. I could hear him shouting orders, organizing, planning. Kiona crawled over to my position, breathing hard. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady on the pistol. "How many?" she asked. 12 came, I said. 1 down hard, 3 wounded, 2 spooked. That leaves 7 still fighting fit, plus Blackwell. Can we hold? I looked at our ammunition. Maybe 200 rounds between the rifle and pistol. Food for 3 days if we rationed. Water from the well outside, if we could reach it. "For a while," I said, "but he's got time on his side. He can wait us out, bring reinforcements." That's when Blackwell made his next move. "Burn them out." His voice carried clear in the cold air. "Pour the kerosene." Through the gaps in the shutters, I saw 3 soldiers moving forward with canteens. Not water. Kerosene from their field lamps. They splashed it on the north wall of my cabin, the wall farthest from our firing positions. I aimed, fired, missed. They were moving too fast, too erratic. Fired again, clipped one in the arm, but he didn't drop the canteen. Then they lit it. The flames caught fast, hungry, climbing the old pine logs like they'd been waiting 8 years for this moment. Black smoke began pouring in through the cracks, acrid and choking. "We have to move," Kiona said, coughing. I'd prepared for this, too. During those 4 hours, we'd rigged the place. I crawled to the stone hearth, reached up into the chimney, found the dynamite sticks I'd placed there. 2 sticks, tied together, fuse ready. "When I like this," I said, "we go out the back. Fast and low, make for the tree line." But then we heard something that stopped us both cold. A child crying. Faint, weak, coming from outside. A boy's voice, maybe 10 or 12 years old, sobbing in terror. Kiona's face went white. "No," she whispered. Blackwell's voice again, triumphant now. "Thorn, you hear that? That's my boy out here. Come out now, or I let him freeze in this snow while you burn alive." I risked a look through the window, and there he was. A boy, 12 years old maybe, tied to a post they'd driven into the frozen ground. Thin face, dark hair, shivering in just a shirt despite the cold. Tears streaming down his face. Dylan Blackwell, the captain's son. "He's using his own child," Kiona said, voice hollow with disbelief. But I saw something in that scene that she didn't. The way the boy flinched when his father's voice rose. The old bruises on his arms. The look in his eyes that wasn't just fear of the cold, but fear of the man who'd tied him there. This wasn't the first time Vernon Blackwell had used his son as a tool. My mind raced. The fire was spreading, smoke getting thicker. We had maybe 5 minutes before the cabin became an oven. But if we went out, Blackwell would cut us down the moment we showed ourselves. Unless... "Cover me," I said to Kiona. "What are you doing?" "Something stupid." I lit the dynamite, counted 3 seconds, and threw it out the window. Not toward Blackwell's position, but toward the horses tied to trees on the east side. The soldiers had left them there, out of the line of fire. The explosion was enormous. Snow and dirt and pine needles erupted into the air. The horses screamed, broke their tethers, stampeded in every direction. Complete chaos. I didn't wait. Grabbed Kiona's hand, kicked open the back door, and ran. We sprinted through the smoke and snow, making for the tree line. Bullets whipped past us, kicked up snow at our feet. I felt one tug at my coat, close enough to count. Kept running. Behind us, the cabin's roof caught fire. Flames licked into the morning sky, orange against gray. We made it to the trees, dove behind a fallen log, gasping for air. My lungs burned from smoke and exertion. I was 43, but running like that made me feel twice that age. Kiona was already reloading the pistol, hands moving with the mechanical precision I'd taught her. "Good girl." "The boy," she said. "We can't leave him." "I know." Through the trees, I could see Dylan still tied to that post. Could see Blackwell standing near him, using the boy as a shield. The other soldiers were trying to regroup, confused by the horse stampede, some of them chasing the animals. That's when we got our miracle. Or maybe it was justice. I've never been sure which. A voice called out from the south, rough and angry. "Captain, stand down!" I knew that voice. Sergeant Lucas Wade, one of Blackwell's own men. But Wade was calling for a stand down, not an attack. Wade stumbled into the clearing, uniform torn, dried blood on his face. Behind him, holding a rifle to his back, was someone I never expected to see. An Apache rider. Young, maybe 16. I recognized the horse, recognized the saddle work. He was from Red Skywalker's band, the elder who'd been trying to maintain peace for the last decade. "Sergeant Wade," Blackwell said, voice cold as January ice. "Why aren't you dead?" "Because I wouldn't die for your lies anymore," Wade said. He held up a leather satchel. Even from this distance, I could see papers inside. "I made copies," Wade continued. "While you were busy hunting this girl, I made copies of everything. Sent them to 3 different places: Fort Union, Santa Fe, even the territorial governor." Blackwell's face went white, then red, then something beyond anger, into a place where men make final, fatal decisions. "You're bluffing," he said.
Am I? Then why is my wife Emily on her way to Lincoln right now, with 12 townswomen, all ready to testify? Why did Marshal Ashford send a telegram yesterday saying he's investigating Fort Stanton? The truth hit Blackwell like a physical blow. His whole body tensed. His hand went to his pistol. Wade kept talking, voice steady, despite the death he must have known was coming. "You killed my brother-in-arms, sold weapons to both sides, burned villages for profit, used your own son as bait." He spit in the snow. "You're not a soldier. You're a monster wearing a uniform." "Wade," Blackwell said quietly, "You're making a mistake." "No, sir. I'm fixing one." Blackwell drew his pistol and shot Wade in the chest. The sergeant went down hard, the Apache boy barely catching him before he hit the ground. Blood spread across Wade's uniform, blooming dark across his left side. Wade gasped, choking on blood, but somehow still conscious, still fighting. He looked toward the trees, looked right at where Kiona and I were hidden, and shouted with fading strength, "Run! Get to Sam Pike's forge! 15 miles north! He'll help you!" His voice broke into coughing. The Apache boy dragged him backward into the brush, disappearing into the trees before Blackwell could fire again. Blackwell turned his pistol on the boy next, but the kid was fast, melted into the trees like smoke, taking Wade's satchel with him, gone before Blackwell could fire. The captain stood there, breathing hard, realizing what he'd just done. He'd shot his own sergeant in front of witnesses. He'd lost control, lost the high ground, lost everything except rage. He turned to his remaining men, 6 soldiers, looking at their captain with new eyes, eyes that had just watched him murder one of their own. "Find them," Blackwell said. "The Apache girl and the mountain man. I want them dead before noon." But his voice had changed, no longer the confident commander, now the desperate criminal who knows the walls are closing in. One of the soldiers, a young private who couldn't have been more than 20, said quietly, "Sir, maybe we should just let them go. Wade was right. This is wrong." Blackwell turned on him. For a moment, I thought he'd shoot that boy too. But something in the private's face, some reminder of lost innocence maybe, stopped him. "Get out," Blackwell said. "All of you who don't have the stomach for this, get out of my sight." 3 soldiers left, just walked away into the trees, heading back toward Fort Stanton. That left 3 loyal men, plus Blackwell himself. Better odds, but still not good. Blackwell cut his son loose from the post. Dylan collapsed into the snow, sobbing. The captain didn't help him up, just stood over him and said, "Stop crying. You're a Blackwell. Act like one." That's when I made my decision. I stood up from behind the log, Winchester in my hands, but not aimed, just held across my chest. "Blackwell," I called out. He spun toward my voice, pistol raised. "Thorne, let the boy go. He's got nothing to do with this. He's my son. He goes where I say. He's a child you're using as a shield." Blackwell's face twisted. For just a moment, I saw something raw there. Not quite human. Not quite sane. "You think you know me?" he said. "You think you understand what I've done? I know you killed my family. That's enough." "Your family?" He laughed, brittle and sharp. "You want to know about family? I watched Apache warriors scalp my mother when I was 8 years old. Watched them burn her alive while my father hid in a root cellar, too afraid to help her. I swore that day I'd make them pay. Every last one of them." "So you became what they were," I said. "Became the monster." "I became strong. I became the one who decides who lives and dies. And I've done well by it. Made money. Built power. Nobody threatens that. Not Wade. Not some Apache whore with stolen papers. And not some half-breed lover who should have stayed dead with his savage wife." The words were meant to hurt. They did. But I'd lived with worse pain for 8 years. "You're done, Blackwell," I said. "Wade's copies are out there. Marshall's coming. Your own men are abandoning you. It's over." "It's over when I say it's over." He grabbed Dylan,
hauled the boy to his feet, put the pistol to his head. The boy screamed. Behind me, I heard Kiona gasp, heard her whisper, "Monster." "Last chance, Thorne," Blackwell shouted. "Girl and papers, or my boy dies." I looked at Dylan's face, looked at that 12-year-old child who'd never asked to be born to a devil in uniform, saw my daughter Sage in his terrified eyes. "Let me talk to her," I called back. "Give me 1 minute." Blackwell considered, nodded once. I turned to Kiona. She was crying silently, tears running down her face. "We can't let him kill that child," she said. "We won't." "But how?" I looked at the lay of the land, the burning cabin behind us. The river 40 yards to the east, frozen, but the ice was thin this time of year. The rocks and trees providing cover. The 3 soldiers positioned wrong, too spread out. And I looked at Sam Pike's forge, 15 miles north. Wade had said Sam would help. That old man had been my only friend in 8 years. He'd lost his own son to war. Maybe he'd want one more fight. "We run," I said. "North. Make for Sam's place." "They'll chase us." "I know, but it's the only play we have." She gripped my arm. "Caleb, I'm sorry. Sorry I brought this to your door." "Don't be," I said, and I meant it. You woke me up. For 8 years, I was just waiting to die. Now I remember what I'm living for. She smiled through her tears. That smile hit me harder than any bullet could have. I stood up again, called to Blackwell. "We're leaving, going north. You want us? You'll have to follow. But let the boy go first." "You think I'm stupid?" "I think you're desperate, and desperate men make mistakes." I didn't wait for his answer, just grabbed Kiona's hand and ran. We plunged into the forest, heading north through snow that came up to our knees. Behind us, I heard Blackwell screaming orders, heard horses being readied, heard the pursuit beginning. But I also heard something else. Dylan's voice, small and frightened. "Father, please, I'm cold." And Blackwell's response, hard and final. "Then you should have been born stronger." We ran through the morning, through forest that grew thicker and more wild with every mile. I knew this country better than any man alive, knew every deer trail, every hidden gulch, every place where the snow hid dangers beneath. I led us across a frozen stream. The ice cracked under our weight but held. Barely. Behind us, I heard a soldier try to follow, heard the ice give way, heard him scream as he went into water cold enough to kill in minutes. His companions pulled him out, but he'd be useless now. Hypothermia would take him before noon unless they got him to shelter. 4 pursuers left. We climbed through a narrow canyon where the rocks pressed close on both sides. At the top, I stopped, pulled out my knife, cut through the supporting ropes I'd set there 2 years ago. A deadfall trap meant for bear. 30 pounds of logs came crashing down, blocking the path behind us. Bought us 10 minutes while they found another way around. We kept moving. My legs burned. My lungs screamed. I was too old for this kind of running. But Kiona never complained, never slowed. She moved through the forest like she'd been born to it. Maybe she had been. By noon, we crested a ridge and saw it. Smoke rising from a valley below. Not the smoke of burning, but the steady smoke of a forge. Sam Pike's place. "There," I gasped. "Just a bit further." That's when the shot came. The bullet missed me by inches, close enough that I felt the wind of its passing. We dove behind rocks as more shots rang out. Blackwell and 3 soldiers, closer than I'd thought, spread out in a firing line. We were pinned. Forge below, pursuit above. Nowhere to run. Kiona looked at me. I looked at her. In that moment, I saw my wife in her eyes, saw strength I'd forgotten existed in the world. "Whatever happens," I said, "I'm glad I cut that rope." She smiled. "Me too." Then, from below, from Sam's forge, came the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. A bear trap snapping shut, a man screaming, and an old voice shouting, "Caleb Thorne! About damn time you brought me some excitement!" Old Sam Pike stood at the bottom of the valley, holding a rifle that looked older than he did. Gray hair flying wild, one eye covered with a patch, grinning like a wolf. "Now get down here," he shouted, "before I have to save you myself." We ran. We stumbled down that slope like drunks at midnight, legs weak from running, lungs burning from cold air. Bullets kicked up snow around us, but Blackwell's men were firing uphill and tired, their aim off just enough to keep us alive. Sam Pike stood at the bottom near his forge, calm as Sunday morning, that ancient rifle steady in his hands. When we got close enough, he fired twice, measured shots, the kind that come from 50 years of knowing exactly where a bullet goes. One of Blackwell's soldiers jerked backward, clutching his arm. The other dove for cover. "Inside!" Sam barked. "Move your backsides!" His cabin was built into the hillside, stone and thick timber, more fortress than home. We crashed through the door, and Sam slammed it behind us, dropping a heavy oak bar across it. The interior was all smoke and iron. A forge burned in the center, coals glowing red-hot. Anvil beside it, hammers and tongs hanging on walls that were more weapon than decoration. I saw rifles, knives, even a few swords. This wasn't just where Sam worked. This was his armory. "Caleb Thorne," Sam said, looking at me with his one good eye. The other had been taken by shrapnel at Antietam 40 years past. 8 years, not a word, not a visit. Now you show up with war on your heels and an Apache girl bleeding on my floor. I looked down. Kiona had collapsed against the wall, hand pressed to her side. Blood seeped between her fingers. Must have caught a bullet during the run and said nothing. Typical. Apache women didn't complain about pain. "Sam," I said, "I need help." "I can see that." He moved to Kiona, knelt with surprising grace for a man of 68, pulled her hand away, examined the wound. "Through and through. Messy, but not fatal. You're lucky, girl." "Don't feel lucky," she whispered. Sam almost smiled. "If you can talk, you can live. Hold still." He worked fast, cleaning the wound with whiskey, packing it with herbs I recognized from Ayana's teaching. Yarrow and sage, old medicines that worked better than most doctors' tools. Wrapped it tight with clean cloth. Outside, we heard Blackwell's voice. "Pike, I know you're in there. Send out Thorne and the girl, and I might let you live." Sam stood, walked to a gun port in the wall, and shouted back, "Vernon Blackwell, you son of a diseased dog. You think you're the first fool to threaten my home? I've been here 30 years, survived 3 Apache raids, 2 border wars, and a grizzly bear that stood 9 feet tall. You're just another pest. This is army business. This is murder business. I heard what you did to Lucas Wade. Shot your own sergeant." Silence outside. Then, "Pike, don't make me burn you out like I did Thorne." Sam looked at me. "He burned your place?" "To the ground. That cabin took you 2 years to build." "I know." Sam's jaw tightened. He turned back to the gun port. "Blackwell, You want to know about burning? Let me tell you about my son, Thomas. You remember him? Good soldier, honest man. Reported you for selling guns to raiders.
Week later, you shot him in the back and called it friendly fire. The rage in Sam's voice filled the cabin like heat from the forge. This was old pain, buried deep, finally erupting. Thomas Pike made his choice, Blackwell called back. He chose wrong. He chose honor, something you wouldn't recognize if it bit your face off. Sam fired through the gun port, not to kill, just to make a point. The bullet spanged off a rock near where Blackwell was hiding. "I've got enough ammunition to hold this place for 3 days," Sam shouted. "Enough food for a week. And every trap between here and the river is set. You want this fight? Come get it." More silence. Then the sound of horses, men moving, taking positions. They were settling in for a siege. Sam turned to us, his face hard, but his eye showing something that might have been joy. "Well now, seems we've got time to talk." He poured coffee from a pot that had been sitting on the forge's edge. Strong stuff, thick as tar, but warm. He handed cups to Kiona and me. "Drink," he said, "then tell me how a hermit and a half-dead Apache girl ended up being worth a captain's entire career." So we told him about the hanging, the rescue, the ledgers proving Blackwell's crimes, Wade's sacrifice, the chase through the mountains. All of it spilled out while the coffee warmed our insides and the forge kept the cold at bay. Sam listened without interrupting, which was his way. When we finished, he sat quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup like it held answers. "Wade made copies," he finally said. "Sent them out." "That's what he said before Blackwell shot him," I confirmed. "Then help's coming. Question is, can we hold until it arrives?" "How long do you figure?" Sam scratched his beard. "Marshal Ashford in Santa Fe? If he got Wade's message yesterday, moved fast, rode hard, maybe he's 2 days out. But that's best case. And worst case? Message never made it. We die here, and Blackwell buries this whole mess." Kiona spoke up from where she sat against the wall, voice tight with pain, but still strong. "There's another way. My people. The reservation is 15 miles east. If we can get word to Elder Red Skywalker, he'll bring warriors." "Apache warriors? Attacking soldiers?" Sam shook his head. "That's how you start another war." "Not attacking," Kiona said. "Bearing witness. My people have been accused of raids Blackwell himself orchestrated. If they stand as witnesses with the marshal, the truth comes out." Sam considered this. "You got a way to reach them?" "The boy," Kiona said. "The Apache rider who was with Wade. If he made it back to the reservation, he'll tell Red Skywalker what happened. They'll know to come." "That's a lot of ifs," I said. "It's all we have." She was right. It was all we had. Hope built on a 16-year-old boy getting home safe through winter mountains, and an old Apache elder believing his testimony enough to risk everything. But sometimes hope is all you need to survive another day. Sam stood, walked to a cabinet in the corner, opened it to reveal more weapons than a small army could use. New rifles, still gleaming with oil. Revolvers, knives, even a few of those newfangled repeating shotguns. "I don't sell these," Sam said. "I make them for special occasions." "You planning a war?" I asked. "Been planning one for 7 years. Since Thomas died. Just been waiting for the right cause." He looked at Kiona. "Reckon I found it." We spent the afternoon preparing. Sam taught Kiona how to reload faster, how to aim while moving, how to make every shot count. She was good, but he made her better. Apache learn weapons young, but Sam had forgotten more about fighting than most men ever know. Me, I worked on defenses. Sam had built smart.
The cabin had 3 firing positions, all covering different approaches. But I added more. Tripwires connected to bells, caltrops scattered on the hidden paths. Even rigged one of Sam's old bear traps near the woodpile, where someone might try to approach unseen. While we worked, Sam told us about Thomas. "Boy was 23 when he died," Sam said, oiling a rifle. "Joined up young, wanted to serve. Thought the Army stood for something honorable." He laughed, bitter. "Learned different under Blackwell's command." "What happened?" Kiona asked. "Thomas saw Blackwell selling rifles to Apache raiders. Not old guns, new ones. Army issue. Thomas being Thomas, he reported it. Followed chain of command, did everything by the book." Sam's hands stilled on the rifle. Week later, they were out on patrol. Blackwell said they got ambushed, said Thomas got hit by Apache fire. But the bullet came from behind, from an Army rifle, and Blackwell was the only one in position to make that shot. "Did you try to prove it?" I asked. "Tried. Got laughed out of the fort. Who's going to believe an old blacksmith over a decorated officer? So I came back here, built my weapons, waited." He looked up at us, his one eye bright and fierce. "Revenge makes you a killer. Justice makes you a man." I wasn't sure which I was waiting for until today. "And now?" Kiona asked. "Now I know. This isn't revenge. This is finishing what Thomas started." We ate as the sun went down. Salt pork and beans, nothing fancy, but it filled the hollow spaces in our bellies. Kiona's wound had stopped bleeding, though she moved careful, testing her limits. As darkness fell, Sam lit a few candles. The forge fire had died to embers, giving just enough light to see by. "Tell me about your wife," Sam said to me suddenly. "Ayana. You never spoke of her. Not in all the times I visited your old cabin." I'd avoided this for 8 years. But sitting there, in that stone room, with bullets waiting outside, and maybe death coming with the dawn, it felt right to remember. "She was a healer," I said. "Learned from her grandmother, who learned from hers. Could cure fevers, set bones, deliver babies. Both whites and Apache came to her. She never turned anyone away." "She sounds good," Sam said. "She was better than good. She saw the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Saw the best in me, which was a miracle considering what I was when we met." "And your daughter?" "Sage." The name still hurt to say. 8 years old, wild as a March wind, climbed every tree, caught fish with her bare hands, laughed at thunder. Ayana said she'd either grow up to be a great warrior or get herself killed doing something brave and stupid. My voice cracked. Sam poured more coffee, didn't comment on the break. "The day they died," I continued, "I was 3 days away, tracking elk, planning to bring back meat for winter. When I got home and saw the smoke, I ran the last 5 miles. Found them together. Ayana had thrown herself over Sage, trying to protect her, both shot in the back." "By Blackwell's order," Kiona said quietly. "By his hand, maybe. The ledger said 47 hostiles eliminated, but that was a peace village. Old people, women, children, no warriors, no weapons, just people trying to survive." Sam's fist hit the table, and they called it justice. They called it necessary. They called it protecting settlers. They called it a lot of things, but what it was murder for profit.
Blackwell wanted that land for mining claims, easier to take from dead people. We sat in silence after that. 3 people bound by loss, bound by rage, bound by a need to see something made right. Then Kiona spoke, and her words changed everything. "Blackwell has a son," she said. "Dylan. 12 years old. I saw how the boy looked at him. That wasn't respect. It was fear."
"You think he abuses the kid?" Sam asked. "I know he does. I saw the bruises when Blackwell used him as bait. Old bruises, not fresh. And the way Dylan flinched when his father spoke." She looked at me. "That boy isn't being raised. He's being broken." "Some men should never be fathers," Sam said. "Some men should never be men," I added. Outside, we heard movement. Footsteps crunching in snow, trying to be quiet and failing. Sam held up his hand for silence. We waited, weapons ready. A voice called out, young and frightened. "Mr. Pike? Mr. Thorne? Please don't shoot. It's me, Dylan Blackwell." Sam and I exchanged looks. Could be a trick. Could be Blackwell sending his son forward as a shield again. "Boy," Sam called back. "You alone?" "Yes, sir. I ran. Father was sleeping and I ran. Please, I'm so cold." "How do we know your father didn't send you?" "Because he'll kill me when he finds out I left. Please, I have something you need to hear."
Kiona stood, wincing from her wound. "Let him in. I know what it's like to run from monsters. If he's lying, we'll know." I opened the door fast, rifle ready. Dylan stood there in the moonlight, shivering in just a thin coat, hands raised, tears frozen on his face. No weapons, no soldiers behind him, just a terrified child. I grabbed him, pulled him inside, barred the door again. The boy collapsed near the forge, soaking up heat like he'd never felt warmth before. Sam threw a blanket over him. Kiona brought water. Dylan drank, coughed, drank more. Then he looked up at us with eyes older than 12 years should ever be. "My father," he said, "killed my mother." The words hung in the air like smoke. "When?" Sam asked gently. 2 years ago. She found his ledgers. The real ones, not the ones he showed his superiors. She said she was going to report him. They argued. She died that night." Dylan's voice was flat, empty. "Everyone said it was fever, but I heard them fighting. Heard her fall down the stairs. Heard the silence after." "And you never told anyone?" Kiona asked. "Who would believe me? I'm just his son. He's a war hero. Captain Vernon Blackwell, decorated officer, friend of senators and generals." The boy's laugh was terrible to hear. "But he's a murderer, and I've been too scared to say it." "Until now," I said. "Until now." Dylan looked at each of us in turn. "Sergeant Wade tried to help me before Father shot him. Wade said there were good people in this world, people who'd stand up to evil, even when it was hard. He said I should be one of those people." "Wade was a good man," Sam said. "He was. And Father killed him for it, just like he killed Thomas Pike, just like he killed your family, Mr. Thorne, just like he's killed so many others." The boy started crying then. Real tears, not manipulative ones. The tears of a child who'd carried terrible knowledge too long and was finally setting it down. Kiona held him while he cried. This Apache woman who'd lost her sister to this boy's father, holding this boy and giving him comfort. That's the kind of strength that changes the world. When Dylan calmed, he spoke again. "There's something else. Father only has 3 men left now. The others deserted after you escaped. And even these 3 are scared after what happened to Wade. They'll leave if they get the chance.
"Do they know you're gone?" I asked. "Not yet, but they will soon. Father was drinking himself mean. When he wakes up, he'll come for me, and he'll come for you." "Let him come," Sam said. "We'll be ready." Dylan shook his head. "You don't understand. Father isn't just fighting for himself anymore. He's fighting because he's lost everything. His career, his reputation, maybe his freedom. Men like that are the most dangerous. They've got nothing left to lose." The boy was right. I'd seen it in the war. Men who knew they were beaten, who had no way out, who decided if they were going down, they'd take everyone else with them. Vernon Blackwell was that man now. "Then we make sure we're ready," I said. "Sam, how much ammunition we got?" "Enough to hold 3 days if they attack smart. Maybe 1 day if they attack stupid and desperate." "He'll attack desperate," Dylan said. "He always does when he's cornered." We spent the rest of the night preparing. Dylan, despite being a child, proved useful. He knew his father's tactics, his preferred strategies, his weaknesses. That boy had been studying his monster for years. Just before dawn, we heard it. Horses approaching from the east, but not from Blackwell's position. Different sound, different rhythm. Sam looked through a gun port. "I'll be damned." "What?" I asked. "Apache. 20 riders, maybe more. And they're flying a white flag." Kiona pushed past us to look. Her face lit up like sunrise. "Red Skywalker. He came." We opened the door carefully. In the gray dawn light, we saw them. Apache warriors on horseback, armed, but weapons lowered. In front rode an old man, his face lined with 70 years of life, his eyes clear and sharp. He wore traditional dress, but also a cavalry coat, a sign of his complicated relationship with both worlds. "Kiona," he called in Apache, then in English for our benefit. "My daughter, you live." "Grandfather," she called back. Not blood grandfather, but the term of respect. "You received the message." The boy Grey Wolf reached us, told us everything. We came to bear witness. Behind Red Skywalker, the warriors spread out, taking positions on the hillside. Not attacking positions, watching positions. A wall of witnesses that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. From Blackwell's camp, we heard shouting, confusion. They'd been ready to assault a cabin. They weren't ready for 20 Apache warriors. Vernon Blackwell emerged from his tent, face dark with rage. "Pike, what is this?" Red Skywalker answered instead, his voice carrying across the valley. "I am Red Skywalker, Peace Chief of the Mescalero. We come to see justice done." "This is military business." "This is murder business. You have killed our people under false pretense, used our grief for your profit. That ends today." "You have no authority here." "We have the authority of witnesses, of truth, and of 20 men willing to die to see that truth spoken." Blackwell's hand went to his pistol. For a moment I thought he'd do it. Thought he'd shoot an unarmed elder and start a war he couldn't win. But then another sound reached us. Horses from the west. Many horses. Marshal James Ashford arrived with 8 deputies, badges gleaming in the morning light. Behind them, a wagon carrying Emily Wade and 12 townswomen, every one of them ready to testify. The net had closed. All of Wade's copies, all of his careful preparation, had borne fruit. Ashford rode forward, tall in the saddle, face hard as granite. "Captain Vernon Blackwell, I have a warrant for your arrest. Charges include murder, treason, trafficking, and corruption of office. Blackwell looked around, saw the Apache warriors, the marshal's deputies, the town's women witnesses, saw his own men starting to lower their weapons, seeing the way the wind was blowing. And then he smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd decided if he couldn't win, he'd burn the whole world down. He grabbed Dylan. Blackwell moved faster than a man his age should move. One moment he was standing surrounded. The next his arm was around Dylan's throat, pistol pressed against the boy's temple. Dylan's scream cut through the morning air like a knife. "Nobody moves!" Blackwell shouted. His voice had changed, gone high and wild. This wasn't the calculating officer anymore. This was a cornered animal. "I walk out of here, or the boy dies." Marshal Ashford held up his hand, stopping his deputies from drawing weapons. "Captain, you're making this worse." "Worse? It can't get worse. You've already destroyed me." "Then don't destroy your son, too." Blackwell laughed, harsh and broken. "My son? This weak little coward? He ran to you, didn't he? Betrayed his own father." Dylan was crying, body shaking in his father's grip. "Please, father, please." "Shut up!" Blackwell pressed the gun harder. "You've always been weak, like your mother. She was weak too, threatened me, so I dealt with her." The words hung in the air. A confession, spoken in rage, heard by 50 witnesses. Emily Wade stood in her wagon, voice ringing clear across the valley. "We heard that. Everyone heard. He confessed to murdering his wife." The townswomen echoed her. "We heard. We all heard." Blackwell's face went pale, realizing what he'd just done. But he was too far gone to stop now. "I don't care. You think your testimony matters? You think any of this matters? I have friends in high places, senators, generals. They'll bury this." "Senator Morrison is already under arrest," Ashford said quietly. "We took him yesterday. He confessed to everything, gave us names, dates, amounts. Your protection is gone, Blackwell." The captain swayed like he'd been struck. "No, you're lying." "I don't lie, unlike you." Red Skywalker spoke then, his voice carrying the weight of 7 decades. "Vernon Blackwell, I knew your mother. She came to our village once, brought food when our children were starving. She was kind. She would weep to see what you've become." "Don't you speak of her!" Blackwell screamed. Could see Blackwell's finger tightening on the trigger. Could see Dylan's eyes, wide with terror, pleading silently for help. I'd been in this position before. 12 years ago, during a train robbery gone wrong, I'd watched a man hold a child hostage. That time, I'd been too far away to help. The child died. I still heard that gunshot in my nightmares. Not today. Not again. I raised my Winchester slowly, finding the angle. 60 yards, slight upward angle. Wind from the east, maybe 3 miles per hour. Blackwell's shoulder just visible past Dylan's head. One shot. Had to be perfect. Sam saw what I was doing, moved to give me a clearer line. Didn't say a word, just positioned himself to block any of Blackwell's men from interfering. Kiona saw too. She stepped out of the forge, drawing every eye, making herself the target. "Captain Blackwell, look at me." He turned toward her voice. That was the moment. I fired. The Winchester roared. The bullet took Blackwell in the right shoulder, the one holding the gun. Spinning him, the pistol flying from his hand. He released Dylan, stumbling backward, clutching the wound. Dylan ran straight to Emily Wade's wagon, and she gathered him up like he was her own. Blackwell dropped to his knees in the snow, blood spreading across his uniform. He looked up at me, eyes full of hate and something else. Recognition, understanding that this was the end. "You," he said, "you were nobody, a half-breed lover hiding in the mountains. How did you beat me?" I walked forward, rifle still ready. Marshal Ashford and his deputies moved in, surrounding the captain. But I needed to say something, needed him to understand. "You didn't lose because I was strong," I said. "You lost because you were wrong, and wrong doesn't win. Not forever. Eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, people stand up." Noble words from a man who hid for 8 years. You're right, I hid. I let fear and grief turn me into a ghost. But she brought me back. I gestured to Kiona. And she's stronger than both of us ever were. Kiona stepped forward, standing beside me. In her hand were the ledgers, the proof of everything. She held them up high so everyone could see. "This is for my sister Naylin," she said, voice steady and strong. "For Thomas Pike, for Lucas Wade, for Caleb's wife Ayanna and daughter Sage, for every person you murdered in your greed." She looked at the gathered crowd, Apache warriors, town women, Marshall's deputies, even Blackwell's own men who'd laid down their weapons. 8 years ago, this man burned a peace village, killed 47 people. The army called it justified. But these ledgers prove he sold those people the weapons they supposedly used. He created the threat. Then he destroyed them to claim their land. Her voice rose, carrying across the valley. "My sister was 15 years old. She died holding a baby she was trying to save. The army said she was a hostile. She was a child." Emily Wade stood in her wagon. "I stand with her. My husband Lucas Wade tried to stop this. Blackwell murdered him." One by one, the townswomen stood. "We stand with her." The Apache warriors raised their rifles, not in threat, but in salute. "We stand with her." Sam Pike's voice, rough with age but strong with conviction. "We stand with her." And then, in the silence that followed, a small voice. Dylan Blackwell, standing in the wagon, tears streaming down his face. "I stand with her. My father is a murderer, and I won't lie for him any more." That's when Blackwell moved. His left hand, the one we weren't watching, grabbed the knife from his boot. He lunged at Dylan, face twisted with rage. "Traitor! Weak little traitor!" But Emily Wade was faster. She'd been holding a rifle, and she swung it like a club, catching Blackwell across the jaw. He went down hard, the knife spinning away into the snow. Marshal Ashford was on him in seconds, knee in the small of his back, iron cuffs clicking shut. "Vernon Blackwell, you are under arrest for murder, treason, trafficking, and crimes too numerous to list. You have the right to speak at your trial, though I suspect you've said more than enough already." 2 deputies hauled Blackwell to his feet. Blood ran from his split lip, mixing with the snow. He looked around at all of us, and for just a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when a man realizes he's going to face justice he can't buy or kill his way out of. "This isn't over," he said. "I have friends. I have money. I'll walk free. And when I do, Every one of you will pay." "No," Ashford said simply. "You won't. Because Senator Morrison already confessed, named 15 officers in your network, 6 civilian contractors, 2 territorial judges. They're all being arrested as we speak. Your empire is done." They led him away to a wagon they'd brought for prisoners. Blackwell's men, the ones who'd stayed loyal, were being cuffed too. The ones who'd deserted earlier were being questioned, given chances to testify in exchange for lesser charges. It was over. Just like that, after 8 years of grief, after days of running and fighting, it was simply over. I stood there in the snow, rifle hanging loose in my hands, not quite believing it. Sam walked over, put his hand on my shoulder, said nothing, but the gesture said everything. Kiona came to stand on my other side. Her wound had reopened during the excitement, blood seeping through the bandage. But she stood straight and tall, holding those ledgers like they were the most precious things in the world. "We did it," she said quietly. "You did it," I corrected. "You could have run, could have hidden. Instead, you stole those papers and risked everything." "Not everything. I risked my life. But I gained something more important. I gained my voice back. For 8 years, I watched in silence while they committed crimes in my name, using me as their translator, their tool. Today, I spoke. Today, I was heard." Red Skywalker approached, moving with the careful dignity of age. He looked at Kiona with eyes that held pride and sorrow mixed together. "Granddaughter," he said in Apache, then switched to English. "You have brought honor to our people, but you have also brought danger. There will be those who say you betrayed the army." "Then let them say it," Kiona replied. "Truth is not betrayal." "No, it is not." He turned to me. "Caleb Thorne, I remember your wife, Ayana. She healed my grandson when the army doctors refused. She was a good woman." "The best," I said. "And your daughter Sage. She would come to our camps, play with our children, laugh without fear. The world is poorer for her loss." The words hit hard, but they were healing words. For 8 years, I'd carried Sage's memory alone, never speaking of her. Hearing someone else say her name, acknowledge she'd existed, mattered. "Thank you," I managed. Marshal Ashford walked over, removing his hat. "Mr. Thorne, Miss Kiona, Mr. Pike, I need to take statements from all of you. This is going to be the biggest trial in territorial history, but I want you to know justice will be served. I give you my word." "Your word worth anything?" Sam asked bluntly. Ashford didn't take offense. "My father was a slave who bought his freedom, joined the Union Army, fought at Shiloh. Taught me that justice isn't a gift from the powerful. It's something people demand and fight for. I've spent 20 years in law enforcement trying to honor that lesson. So yes, Mr. Pike, my word is worth something." Sam studied him, then nodded. "Good enough." We spent the next hour giving statements. Emily Wade gave hers, naming the townswomen who'd witnessed Blackwell's crimes over the years. Small things mostly, but they added up. Bribes, threats, unexplained disappearances. Dylan Blackwell gave the hardest testimony. 12 years old, speaking calmly about watching his father murder his mother. About years of abuse, of being used as a tool and a shield. Ashford was gentle with him, but the boy wanted it all on record. "I don't want to be his son anymore," Dylan said at the end. "I know I can't change my name until I'm older, but when I can, I will."
I won't carry his shame." Emily Wade, who'd been standing nearby, said quietly, "You can stay with my family if you want. Lucas would have wanted that, and I could use the company." Dylan looked at her with hope he'd probably never felt before. "Really?" "Really. You're not your father. You never have to be." The boy started crying again, but these were different tears. Relief. Hope. The tears of someone who'd just been given a future. By noon, the valley started emptying. The Apache warriors prepared to return to the reservation, their role as witnesses complete. Red Skywalker paused before leaving, speaking to Kiona in their language. I couldn't understand all of it, but I caught enough. He was blessing her, calling her brave, telling her she'd always have a home with the people. She hugged him, this old man who'd been like a father to her. Then he rode away, 20 warriors at his back, disappearing into the winter landscape like they'd never been there at all. The townswomen left next, Emily Wade's wagon leading them back to Lincoln. Dylan sat beside Emily, bundled in blankets, already looking lighter somehow. The weight of secrets lifted. Marshal Ashford and his deputies prepared to transport Blackwell and his men to Santa Fe for trial. Before they left, Ashford pulled me aside. "Mr. Thorne, there's something you should know. Blackwell's lawyer is going to argue temporary insanity, battle fatigue from his campaigns. They'll say he was a good man broken by war." "He wasn't broken by war," I said. "He was revealed by it. War just gave him permission to be the monster he always was." "I agree. But juries are unpredictable. He might get a lighter sentence than he deserves." "How light?" 10 years instead of hanging. Maybe less if his friends still have influence." The rage that flickered through me was old and familiar. But then I thought about what Kiona had said, about finding her voice, about truth being the victory, not revenge. "Then we make sure the truth is so loud, so clear, that no amount of lawyers can silence it," I said. "We testify. We bring witnesses. We make sure everyone knows exactly what he did." Ashford smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." They left as the sun reached its peak, a long line of horses and wagons heading west toward Santa Fe and justice. We stood watching until they disappeared, Sam and Kiona and me, the last 3 standing. "Well," Sam said finally, "I suppose we should eat something. I've got salt pork and beans. Not fancy, but it's hot." We went inside the forge. The fire had died down, but Sam built it back up, bringing warmth and light to the stone room. We ate in silence for a while, too tired for words, too wrung out by everything that had happened. Finally, Kiona spoke. "What happens now? For us, I mean." "You going back to the reservation?" Sam asked. "No, Red Skywalker said I should go to Santa Fe, learn more medicine. The old ways are good, but the new ways have value too. If I can combine them, I can help more people." "That's good," I said. "You'll make a fine doctor." "What about you, Caleb? Where will you go?" That was the question, wasn't it? My cabin was burned. My 8 years of isolation were over. I couldn't go back to being that ghost in the mountains, even if I wanted to. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe rebuild somewhere new. Maybe find work guiding settlers. Maybe just drift for a while." "Or," Sam said slowly, "you could stay here. I'm not getting any younger. Could use help with the forge, and the hunting, and everything else." I looked at him. This old man who'd been my only friend through the darkest years, who'd risked everything to help us. "You asking me to be your partner?" "I'm asking you to stop hiding. You're good with your hands.
Good with people when you bother to talk to them. Could do worse than staying here, building a life. Could do worse, I agreed. Kiona smiled. Then it's settled. Sam keeps you busy here, and when I visit from Santa Fe, you better have learned to cook something besides salt pork. We laughed. Actual laughter. The kind that felt strange after so much darkness. The kind that meant maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. That night we sat around the forge fire as the temperature dropped outside. Sam told stories about Thomas, about his son's dreams and jokes, and the kind of man he'd been. It hurt to hear, but it was a good hurt. The kind that comes from remembering love instead of just loss. Kiona told stories about Naylan, about her sister's laughter and stubbornness, and the way she'd once convinced an entire village to help her rescue an injured hawk. Stories that made Naylan real again, if only for an evening. And I told stories about Sage I hadn't shared before. About the time she tried to shoe a wild Mustang and got kicked into a water trough. About how she'd collect injured birds and nurse them back to health, then cry when they flew away because she wanted them to stay. About the morning she asked me why grown-ups made everything so complicated when being kind seemed so simple. She was right, I said. 8 years old, and she understood something grown men never figure out. Children often do, Sam said. They haven't learned to lie to themselves yet. We sat quiet for a while after that. Then Kiona said, "Can I ask you something, Caleb? When you found me hanging there, what made you cut the rope? Really?" I thought about it. About that moment in the snow, the storm howling, the choice presenting itself. "I saw Sage," I said finally. "Saw her face in yours. And I couldn't let it happen again. Couldn't stand there and do nothing while someone died. Not again." "So you saved me for her?" "No, I saved you for me. Because I realized that living like I'd been living, that wasn't honoring Sage and Ayanna. It was betraying them. They wouldn't have wanted me to turn my back on someone who needed help. They would have run to that rope without hesitation." "So you finally became the man they believed you were," Sam said. "I'm trying to be. Still got a long way to go." "We all do," Kiona said. "But at least now we're walking that road together." She was right. Somehow, through all the violence and fear and grief, we'd become something like a family. Not the family any of us had lost, but a new one. Chosen. Built from necessity and trust and shared pain. Outside, the winter wind picked up, howling around the forge. But inside, we were warm. Inside, we were safe. Inside, we were healing. And that was enough. For tonight, it was more than enough. 3 months. That's how long it took for the wheels of justice to turn. Winter gave way to early spring by the time we rode into Santa Fe for the trial. Me, Sam, and Kiona, along with 24 others who'd been summoned to testify. Emily Wade brought Dylan, who'd grown taller somehow in those months, like being free of his father's shadow had let him finally breathe. Santa Fe in March of 1887 was mud and melting snow, and crowds gathering like this was a carnival instead of a trial. The territorial courthouse couldn't hold everyone who wanted to see Captain Vernon Blackwell face justice. They had to move proceedings to the Opera House, the only building big enough. I'd never been inside an opera house before. All that velvet and gilt, the chandeliers hanging like frozen stars. Seemed wrong somehow to discuss murder and suffering in a place meant for music and beauty. But maybe that was the point. Maybe justice needed to happen in the light, where everyone could see. The prosecution had built their case carefully. 23 counts of murder, 14 counts of weapons trafficking, 8 counts of land fraud, 6 counts of human trafficking, and 1 count of treason against the United States government. If convicted on even half those charges, Blackwell would hang. His lawyers were expensive men from back east, the kind who wore suits that cost more than most people earned in a year. They'd been hired by what remained of his network, the men who hadn't been caught yet, but needed Blackwell to keep quiet about their involvement. On the first day, those lawyers argued exactly what Marshal Ashford had predicted. Their client was a war hero, they said, a man who'd served his country with distinction for 23 years. If he'd made errors in judgment, it was because the frontier had broken him. Battle fatigue, the weight of command, the impossible decisions required in savage country. That word, savage. I felt Kiona tense beside me in the gallery, felt Red Skywalker, who'd come to watch, go still as stone. The prosecution stood. His name was Robert Chen, a Chinese man who'd become a lawyer after the railroads no longer needed workers. He was young, maybe 35, but sharp as a fresh ground blade. "The defense would have you believe," Chen said, walking slowly in front of the jury box, "that war drove Captain Blackwell mad, that killing became a habit he couldn't break. But the evidence shows something far more calculated, far more cold." He held up the ledgers, Kiona's ledgers, the ones she'd risked everything to steal. "These books show 8 years of transactions. Weapons sold to Apache raiders on Monday. Military response on Wednesday. Land claims filed on Friday. This wasn't madness, gentlemen of the jury. This was business." The trial lasted 2 weeks. Each day brought new testimony, new evidence, new horrors revealed in the clean light of that opera house. Emily Wade testified about her husband, Lucas, about how he'd tried to stop Blackwell and died for it. She spoke calmly, factually, but when she described finding Lucas dying in the snow, even the lawyers from back east looked away. The Apache warriors testified through translators, describing raids that Blackwell himself had orchestrated, attacks blamed on them that they'd had no part in. Villages burned for resisting eviction from land that was legally theirs. Dylan Blackwell testified. That was the hardest day. Watching a 12-year-old boy describe his father's crimes, including the murder of his mother. The defense lawyers tried to discredit him, suggested he was confused, traumatized, manipulated by his father's enemies. But Dylan never wavered. When asked why he'd waited 2 years to speak up, he looked directly at his father and said, "Because I was afraid. He killed my mother. I thought he'd kill me too if I talked. But then I saw him shoot Sergeant Wade, saw him use me as a shield, and I realized being quiet was the same as helping him hurt people. I couldn't do it anymore." The courtroom was silent after that. Even Blackwell's lawyers had no questions. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on a Tuesday morning, feeling every eye in that opera house on me. Took the oath on a Bible I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Sat down and looked at Blackwell for the first time since his arrest. He'd aged in 3 months. Gray had spread through his hair. Lines had deepened around his eyes. But those eyes were still cold, still calculating. He stared at me like he was memorizing my face for some future reckoning. Chen approached. "Mr. Thorne, please tell the court about April 15th, 1878. So I did. Told them about coming home from hunting to find smoke on the horizon. about the ashes of the Peace Village, about finding Ayana and Sage, about burying them on that hillside while Blackwell watched and called their deaths acceptable losses. "Did Captain Blackwell express any remorse?" Chen asked. "No. He said it was unfortunate but necessary. Said they'd been harboring hostiles." "Were they harboring hostiles?" "They were harboring children, old people, a hermit, someone who might harbor grudges, see conspiracies where none exist. I lived alone because everyone I loved was murdered. That's not instability, that's grief. Or perhaps it's guilt. Perhaps you feel responsible for not being there to protect your family. Perhaps you've spent 8 years building a narrative where someone else is to blame." I felt anger rising, forced it down. "I don't need to build narratives. The ledgers speak for themselves. My wife and daughter are in those books, listed as acceptable losses in an operation that was really about seizing land for silver mining." "You've read the ledgers?" "Every page. And you believe they're authentic?" "I know they are. I recognize Blackwell's handwriting from the orders he gave me during the war. Same hand, same man." Sutton changed tactics. "You shot Captain Blackwell, wounded him. One might say you were trying to kill him." "I was trying to save his son." "By shooting a man?" "By stopping a man who was about to murder his own child. If you think that's wrong, then we've got nothing more to discuss." The courtroom murmured. The judge banged his gavel for order. When my testimony ended, I walked back to my seat beside Sam. He nodded once. That was enough. Kiona testified on the Thursday of the second week. She wore a simple dress, not traditional Apache clothing. Chen had advised her that some jurors might be prejudiced. Better to look as American as possible. But when she took the stand, she spoke first in Apache. Just a few words, a prayer to her ancestors. Then in English. "I am Kiona of the Mescalero people. I am 27 years old. For 5 years, I worked as translator and healer for the United States Army at Fort Stanton. I thought I was helping keep peace between our peoples. I was wrong." She told them everything. About being kept as essentially a hostage. About discovering Blackwell's ledgers. About stealing them and running. About being caught and hanged. Only surviving because of the storm, and because I'd cut her down. When Chen asked why she'd risked her life to steal the ledgers, she looked directly at the jury. "Because silence is permission," she said. "Every day I stayed quiet. I gave permission for the crimes to continue. My sister Naylin died in one of Captain Blackwell's staged raids. She was 15 years old. If I'd spoken sooner, maybe she'd still be alive. I can't change that. But I could make sure her death meant something. Could make sure the truth finally came out." The defense tried to shake her testimony. Suggested she'd stolen the ledgers for revenge. Altered them to frame an innocent man. But Kiona had an answer for everything. She'd made copies of the copies. Had witnesses who'd seen the original books. Had dates and events that correlated with official Army records. "You're asking us to believe," Sutton said, "that a decorated Army officer spent 8 years orchestrating crimes, carefully documenting them, and then left those documents where a translator could find them." "I'm not asking you to believe anything," Kiona replied. "I'm showing you proof. What you do with it is your choice. But the proof exists. The crimes happened. 47 people died in the Sibique Creek operation alone. You can read their names in that ledger. Can see how much money Captain Blackwell made from claiming their land. That's not revenge. That's arithmetic." The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge threatened to clear the gallery, but didn't follow through. Even he seemed moved by her words. On the final day,
The defense called their own witnesses, officers who'd served with Blackwell, who testified to his bravery and leadership. A doctor who'd treated him for what they called soldier's heart, the mental strain of command. Even a senator, one who hadn't been implicated in the corruption, who spoke about Blackwell's record of service. On the final day, the defense called their own witnesses, officers who'd served with Blackwell, who testified to his bravery and leadership. A doctor who'd treated him for what they called soldier's heart, the mental strain of command. Even a senator, one who hadn't been implicated in the corruption, who spoke about Blackwell's record of service. Then came the prosecution's surprise. Chen stood before the judge with a leather-bound journal, smaller than the ledgers, black cover, worn edges. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to enter into evidence Captain Blackwell's personal journal, recovered from his locked trunk at Fort Stanton during the investigation." Blackwell's face went white. His lawyers immediately objected, but the judge overruled them. The journal had been obtained legally during the search. Chen opened to a marked page and read aloud. July 12, 1883. Another successful operation. 15 hostiles eliminated. $5,000 in land claims secured. The secret is elegantly simple. I sell them weapons through intermediaries on Monday. They use those weapons to raid settlers on Wednesday. I lead the military response on Friday and claim the land on Saturday. The government pays me to solve problems I create. It is the perfect business model, and no one suspects a thing. The courtroom erupted. Even some of Blackwell's own character witnesses looked shocked. Chen continued, flipping pages. September 3, 1881. Shot another complainer today. Made it look like combat. The men are starting to fear me, which is exactly what I need. Fear ensures loyalty better than honor ever could. He closed the journal and held it up. This wasn't a man broken by war, gentlemen of the jury. This was a man who documented his crimes with pride, who turned murder into profit and called it genius. Blackwell lunged from his chair, screaming, "That's private! You have no right!" His lawyers restrained him, but the damage was done. The jury had seen everything they needed to see. But then the prosecution called their final witness. Someone I hadn't known would testify, someone whose testimony changed everything. Sergeant Lucas Wade walked into that courtroom. The gasp from the crowd was audible. We'd all thought he was dead. Blackwell had shot him in the chest. We'd seen him fall, seen the blood. But there he was, walking with a cane, moving slowly, but alive, very much alive. Chen approached him with something like reverence. "Sergeant Wade, please tell the court how you survived." Wade's voice was rough, damaged by the bullet that had collapsed his lung, but it was strong enough. "Blackwell's shot hit me in the left chest, collapsed my lung, cracked 2 ribs, but it missed my heart by 2 inches. The Apache boy, Gray Wolf, he didn't run like everyone thought. He dragged me into the brush, hid me. When Red Skywalker's warriors arrived, they took me back to the reservation. Their healer saved my life, using traditional medicine the army doctors don't even understand. Why didn't you reveal yourself sooner? Because I wanted to see what Blackwell would do if he thought I was dead. Wanted to see if he'd confess, admit to crimes, show his true nature. And he did. All of it." Wade turned to look at Blackwell. "I've served under you for 7 years, sir. Thought you were a hero. But you shot me in cold blood for trying to do what's right. That's when I knew. You're not a soldier. You're a murderer in uniform." The defense had no questions. What could they ask? Closing arguments happened on a Friday. Chen spoke for 2 hours, methodically laying out the evidence, the ledgers, the testimony, the bodies, the money, the pattern of crimes spanning nearly a decade. "Gentlemen of the jury," he finished,
The defense wants you to believe that war broke Captain Blackwell. But war doesn't make men evil. It reveals what was already there. And what was in Captain Vernon Blackwell was greed, cruelty, and a complete disregard for human life. Mexican, Apache, white. Didn't matter to him. All that mattered was profit and power. That's not insanity. That's evil. And evil must be punished, or none of us are safe. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. We waited in a restaurant across the street, unable to eat, unable to do anything but watch the courthouse doors. Dylan sat with Emily Wade, holding her hand like a son would hold his mother's. Sam smoked his pipe, saying nothing. Red Skywalker stood by the window, as still as the mountains he'd been named for. Kiona paced. I'd never seen her restless before, but she couldn't sit still. Finally, I caught her arm. "It's done," I said. "Whatever happens, we told the truth. We stood up. That matters." "What if they acquit him? Then we live with it. But we'll know we tried, and maybe that's all anyone can do." She looked at me with eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. "Is that really enough for you, after what he took from you?" "No," I admitted, "but it's what I have. Hanging him won't bring Ayanna and Sage back, won't give you Nayland back, won't resurrect Thomas or all the others. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure he can't hurt anyone else. And if he walks free, he will hurt more people. Then we make sure he doesn't walk free. We keep telling the story, keep pushing. We don't give up." She nodded slowly. "You've changed, from the man who lived alone for 8 years. "I had a good teacher," I smiled. "Stubborn Apache woman who wouldn't let me hide anymore." That got a small smile from her. Progress. At 4 o'clock, the courthouse bells rang. The jury had reached a verdict. We filed back into the opera house, taking our seats. The crowd had grown somehow, word having spread that a decision was coming. Every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. This was history, and everyone wanted to witness it. Blackwell was brought in, still in chains despite his lawyer's protests. He looked smaller somehow, like the waiting had hollowed him out. But when his eyes found mine across the courtroom, they still held that cold calculation. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. The ritual of justice proceeding according to forms older than any of us. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. A merchant from Santa Fe, middle-aged, respectable. He held a piece of paper like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find?" "Guilty." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, but the noise continued. Guilty. They'd said guilty. "On the charge of treason against the United States?" "Guilty." "On the charges of weapons trafficking?" "Guilty on all counts." It went on. 23 counts of murder. Guilty on 21. 14 counts of trafficking. Guilty on all 14. By the time the foreman finished reading, Blackwell had been convicted of 38 separate crimes. The judge called for order, finally got it. "Captain Vernon Blackwell, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers on charges that shame the uniform you once wore with distinction. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say?" Blackwell stood. His lawyers tried to stop him, but he shook them off. And when he spoke, it wasn't with remorse or fear. It was with rage. "You call this justice? You people destroyed me.
I spent 23 years serving this country, risking my life. And this is how you repay service? By believing the lies of a savage squaw and a half-breed lover and a traitor sergeant? The courtroom gasped at the language. The judge's face went red.
But Blackwell wasn't done. You think you've won? You think catching me changes anything? There are 100 more like me, 1,000. The frontier isn't civilized because men like me made hard choices, did brutal things so people like you could sleep safe. And now, you dare judge me? Captain Blackwell, sit down. No, you will hear this. I did what was necessary, killed who needed killing, took what was rightfully ours. This land belonged to savages who didn't know what to do with it. We took it because we were stronger. That's how the world works. The strong take from the weak, and I'm strong. I'm still strong. He was screaming now, spit flying, face purple with rage. The deputies moved to restrain him, but he kept shouting even as they pulled him down. You think hanging me solves anything? You think your precious justice changes what I am? I'm a soldier. I'm a warrior. I'm everything you people are too weak to be. And history will prove me right.
Will show that I was just ahead of my time. They finally got him quiet, hand over his mouth, dragging him back down to his seat. The courtroom was silent, shocked by the outburst. The judge took his time, letting the moment settle. The entire opera house fell silent. You could hear people breathing, the creak of wooden benches. Nothing else. He stood, and every eye in that room locked on him. Captain Vernon Blackwell, the judge began, voice carrying to every corner. I have sat on this bench for 30 years. I have sentenced murderers, thieves, rapists, and traitors. But in all those years, I have never encountered evil as calculated, as deliberate as yours. He paused, letting the words land. You did not kill in passion. You did not kill in fear. You killed for profit. You orchestrated massacres, documented them in your own hand, and slept soundly while families buried their children. You wore the uniform of the United States Army while committing treason against everything that uniform represents. Blackwell's face had gone from red to white, to something beyond color. Your crimes have destroyed not just lives, but communities. You have caused wars that killed hundreds, orphaned children, widowed women, and you did it knowingly, proudly, without a shred of remorse. The judge picked up his gavel, held it high. You are correct about one thing. You are strong. But strength without honor is just tyranny. Strength without mercy is just cruelty. You had power, and you used it to hurt the powerless. That is not what soldiers do. That is what cowards do. His voice rose, filling the opera house like thunder. On 21 counts of murder in the first degree, I sentence you to death by hanging. Execution to be carried out on the first Tuesday of June, 1887. On the remaining 38 counts of treason, trafficking, and corruption, I sentence you to consecutive life terms, which are irrelevant since you will not live to serve them. He raised the gavel higher. May God have mercy on your soul, Captain Blackwell, though I cannot imagine why he would. The gavel fell. Crack. The sound echoed through that opera house like a gunshot, like thunder, like the door of hell slamming shut. Final, absolute, justice delivered. Blackwell was dragged from the courtroom, still shouting, still raging. But his words were lost in the sound of applause, of crying, of people standing and embracing like they'd just been freed from a long imprisonment. Because they had been. We all had been. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine felt like a blessing. I stood on the steps, breathing air that tasted cleaner somehow, like the world had been washed clean by truth. Kiona found me there. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were bright with emotion that ran too deep for tears. "We did it," she said. "You did it. You stole those ledgers, started all of this. And you cut the rope, gave me a second chance." We stood together, watching the crowd disperse, watching justice ripple out into the world. Somewhere in that crowd, Dylan Blackwell walked with Emily Wade, free of his father's shadow. Somewhere, Apache families learned that the man who'd destroyed their lives would answer for it. Somewhere, the truth was changing things. "What now?" I asked. "Now I learn, become a doctor, help people." "And me?" "You live, finally, truly, not as a ghost, but as a man." She was right. For the first time in 8 years, I felt the future opening up instead of closing down. Felt possibility instead of just regret. "Thank you," I said, "for waking me up." "Thank you," she replied, "for being worth waking." Then she walked away down those courthouse steps, heading toward her future. A future where she'd heal instead of hurt, where she'd build instead of destroy. I watched her go, that strong Apache woman who'd hung from a rope and refused to die, who'd stolen truth from the darkness and dragged it into light, who'd reminded me that living meant fighting, meant standing up, meant being more than just your pain. Sam came to stand beside me. "We headin' back to the forge?" "Yeah, got work to do." "Buildin'?" "Building, creating, living." He nodded, satisfied. "'Bout damn time." We walked together through Santa Fe's muddy streets, 2 old men who'd found purpose again in the twilight of their lives. Above us, the spring sky stretched endless and blue, full of promise and light. And somewhere in the mountains, on a hillside overlooking ashes and memory, 2 graves stood peaceful in the sunshine. Ayanna and Sage, finally avenged, finally at rest. I'd go visit them soon, tell them about Kiona, about justice, about how their deaths, senseless and brutal as they'd been, had sparked something that burned through lies and revealed truth. But first, I'd live, I'd work, I'd build, because that's what they would have wanted. Not revenge, not isolation, just a man choosing to be human again. And that, after everything, felt like the greatest victory of all. 3 months after the trial, I stood on a hillside in early summer, wildflowers in my hand. Yellow and purple blooms, the kind Ayanna used to gather for medicine and for beauty. The kind that grew where the earth remembered kindness. The graves were exactly as I'd left them 8 years before. 2 simple wooden crosses, weathered by time, but still standing. I'd carved their names myself with a knife that shook in my hands. Ayanna Thorne, Sage Thorne, beloved wife and daughter. I knelt in the grass, placed the flowers between the crosses, spoke to the wind and the silence and whatever remained of the souls I'd loved. "It's done," I said. "Blackwell hangs next week." Justice took its sweet time, but it came. Kiona's going to be a doctor. Dylan's free of his father. And me, well, I'm living again. Actually living, not just breathing. The wind moved through the pines, and for a moment, I could almost hear Ayana's voice in it. Could almost hear her say what she'd said 1,000 times when I was troubled. The hardest thing is not to stop caring. It's to care again after caring hurts you. I'd stopped caring for 8 years, let grief turn me into stone. But Kiona had cracked that stone wide open, reminded me that caring was the only thing that made life worth living. I won't forget you, I told the graves, won't stop loving you. But I won't let that love keep me from living either. Think maybe that's what you'd want, what you'd choose, if you could. I sat there for an hour, just being present with memory. Let myself feel the loss without drowning in it. That was new. That was progress. When I finally stood to leave, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small Apache prayer bundle hanging from Sage's cross. Fresh sage and sweetgrass, tied with leather cord. Someone had been here recently. Kiona. It had to be. She'd come to pay respects before leaving for her studies in Santa Fe. The gesture touched me deeper than words could reach. I rode back to Sam's forge as the sun climbed toward noon. The valley looked different in summer, green where it had been white, alive where it had been sleeping. Everything grew, everything changed, even old men who thought they were done changing. Sam was at the anvil when I arrived, hammer ringing against hot iron. He'd been teaching me his craft these past months. My hands, used to rifles and knives and killing tools, were learning to create instead, to shape metal into horseshoes, hinges, tools that helped rather than hurt. "How was the visit?" he asked, without stopping his work. "Good. Needed." "She leave you those flowers?" "She did." Sam smiled. "That girl's got more grace than most people twice her age." He was right. Kiona had been through hell, but somehow kept her capacity for kindness. That took strength most people never found. "She leaves for Santa Fe next week," I said, "before Blackwell's execution." "Smart. No need to watch that. Justice is served whether you witness it or not." I wasn't sure I agreed, but I understood her choice. Watching Blackwell hang wouldn't bring Nayland back, wouldn't change what had been lost. Better to focus on the future she was building. We worked through the afternoon, the rhythm of forge work meditative and satisfying. Hot iron, cold water, the transformation of raw material into something useful. There was wisdom in it, maybe even healing. Around sunset, we heard horses approaching, 2 riders moving slow. Not a threat, just visitors. Emily Wade and Dylan Blackwell rode into the yard, the boy sitting tall in his saddle now. He'd grown in the months since the trial, not just physically, but in some deeper way. The fear that had hunched his shoulders was gone, replaced by something that looked like hope. "Mr. Thorne, Mr. Pike," Emily greeted us. "We're heading to Santa Fe tomorrow. Thought we'd say goodbye." "You moving there permanent?" Sam asked. "Dylan's enrolled in school there. Best education in the territory. And I've got work with the federal office, helping other families testify in corruption cases. Turns out there's a lot of cleaning up to do." "Good for you," I said. Then to Dylan, "How you feeling about school?" The boy considered the question seriously, like he considered everything these days. "Nervous, but also excited. I want to learn law, want to help people the way Mr. Chen helped us." "That's a fine goal." "Mr. Thorne, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think, after what my father did, I can still be a good man? Or is his evil in me too?" The question hit hard.
this 12-year-old boy, asking what haunted men spend lifetimes wondering. I knelt to be at his eye level. Dylan, evil isn't inherited. It's chosen. Every day, you choose who you want to be. Your father chose wrong. You're choosing right. That's all that matters. But people know who my father is. They'll always know. Let them know. Let them watch you be nothing like him. Best revenge against a bad father is becoming a good man despite him. Dylan's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. Thank you for saving me that day, for shooting him instead of letting him kill me. You would have done the same. I don't know. I was too scared. Fear doesn't make you weak. Acting despite fear, that's what makes you strong. And you've done that every day since. Standing up to testify, telling the truth. That took more courage than most men ever find. He hugged me then, this boy who was learning to be free. Emily wiped her eyes, trying not to cry and failing beautifully. They left as the last light faded, riding toward a future that was uncertain but possible. That was more than they'd had before. Sam and I ate dinner in comfortable silence, beans and cornbread washed down with coffee. Then he surprised me by pulling out a bottle of whiskey. Good stuff, not the rot gut we usually drank. Special occasion? I asked. Thomas's birthday. He would have been 30 today. We poured 2 glasses. Sam held his up to the lamplight, looking through amber liquid at memories only he could see. To my son, he said, who died doing what was right. And to second chances, which he never got, but gave to others. We drank. The whiskey burned, but it was a good burn, the kind that reminded you that you were still alive. You ever regret it? I asked. Helping us? Risking your life for people you barely knew? Sam thought about it. No. I spent 7 years after Thomas died being angry, being bitter, planning revenge I never took because I knew it wouldn't help. Then you showed up with Kiona, both of you running from the same man who killed my boy, and suddenly I had a choice. Keep being angry, or actually do something. And doing something felt better? Doing something felt like honoring Thomas properly, not with rage, but with action, with standing up when it mattered. He refilled our glasses. You know what Thomas said to me the night before he deployed to Fort Stanton? He said, Pa, if something happens to me, don't let it make you small. Don't let grief shrink you down to nothing. Smart kid. Took me 7 years to understand what he meant. What did he mean? That grief has a choice in it. You can let it crush you, make you less than you were. Or you can let it expand you, make you care deeper, fight harder, love bigger. He wanted me to choose the second path. You think we did? Choose the right path? I think we chose the only path worth walking, and I think Thomas would be proud. We sat drinking until the bottle was empty and the lamp burned low. Talked about sons and daughters, about wives and losses, about all the ways love persists even after death. It was the kind of conversation men rarely have, too afraid of seeming soft. But we were old enough not to care about seeming anything except honest. The next morning, Kiona arrived just after dawn. She rode alone, sitting her horse with the confidence of someone who'd traveled hard miles. A pack was tied behind her saddle, everything she owned in the world, probably fitting in that one leather bag. We ate breakfast together, all 3 of us, like family. Sam made eggs and bacon. Kiona brought fresh bread from the reservation bakery. I contributed coffee strong enough to wake the dead. You ready for Santa Fe?
Sam asked her. No, but I'm going anyway. Being ready is overrated. That got a laugh from both of us. She was right. Waiting to feel ready meant never moving at all. How long's the medical training? I asked. 3 years if I study hard. They've got a program now, training doctors specifically to work with reservation populations, combining traditional medicine with modern practice. You'll be good at it. I hope so. My people need healers who understand both worlds. Too many doctors don't respect our ways. Too many traditional healers don't trust new methods. Someone has to bridge that gap. And that someone is you. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. Someone has to carry Nayland's memory forward. Someone has to make sure her death pushed the world toward something better. We walked her to her horse when the sun cleared the mountains. She checked her gear, adjusted her saddle, delayed the moment of leaving. Thank you, she said finally, both of you, for helping me survive, for helping me do what needed doing. Thank you for waking us up, Sam replied, for reminding us we still had fight left. She turned to me. Caleb Thorne, when I was hanging from that rope, I thought I'd wasted my life. Thought I'd never done anything that mattered. Then you cut me down and gave me another chance. I won't waste it. I know you won't. And you? What will you do? Keep working the forge. Keep learning to build instead of break. Maybe take on some guiding work when settlers need help through the mountains. Live quietly, but not alone. Good. You've been alone long enough. She mounted her horse, sat looking down at us for a long moment. Then she reached into her shirt and pulled out something small, held it out to me. It was Sage's cloth doll, the one I'd left on the table in my burning cabin months ago. Somehow she'd retrieved it, kept it safe all this time. I found this in the ashes, she said. Thought you might want it back. I took the doll with hands that shook. It was scorched, dirty, but whole, like it had survived the fire through sheer stubbornness. Thank you, I managed. This means more than you know. I know exactly what it means. It means you're ready to remember love without drowning in loss. Keep it close. Let it remind you that you're still a father, even if your daughter walks in another world now. Then she rode away, heading south toward Santa Fe and education, and a future she'd build from strength and wisdom. We watched until she disappeared around the bend, until the sound of her horse faded into mountain silence. Sam put his hand on my shoulder. She's going to change the world, that one. She already has. We went back to work. The forge, the anvil, the simple satisfaction of making things. Days turned to weeks. Summer deepened. News came occasionally from Santa Fe. Blackwell hanged on a Tuesday in June. Died cursing everyone and claiming he'd been right all along. Died unrepentant and unmourned. The newspaper said 200 people watched. I was glad I hadn't been one of them. Sam was right. Justice was served, whether we witnessed it or not. Dylan sent a letter. He'd started school, was struggling with reading, but excelling at mathematics. Emily had taken him to see a lawyer friend who'd agreed to mentor the boy. Maybe I can help people someday, Dylan wrote in careful script. Make up for what my father destroyed. Kiona wrote monthly. Letters full of medical terminology I didn't understand, and stories about patients she was learning to help. I delivered my first baby last week, one letter said. A girl, healthy and strong. Her mother named her Ayana, after your wife. Said the name means eternal blossom, and she wants her daughter to grow beautiful and strong. I cried when she told me. I cried reading it. Good tears, though. The kind that water seeds instead of drowning them.
Red Skywalker visited once, in late summer, rode into our valley with 3 young warriors, ostensibly to trade for horseshoes, but really to check on us. "You have become part of the story," he told me while Sam fitted shoes to his horses. "The story our children will hear. How a white man loved an Apache woman,
How their daughter bridged worlds. How justice was served when all seemed lost. I didn't do anything special. You cut the rope. When you could have walked away, you cut the rope. That is always special. That is always heroic. I just couldn't let her die. Yes, that is what makes it heroic. You could not live with yourself if you did nothing. That is the seed of all good action." He gave me a gift before leaving, an Apache knife, beautifully made, with a handle carved from elk antler. For when you visit your family's graves, to cut sage and sweetgrass, to make offerings. You are honorary Apache now, part of 2 worlds, like your daughter was. I thanked him, throat too tight for more words. As fall approached and the aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, actually living, with plans and purpose and connections to other people. Sam and I had built the forge business into something sustainable. We had regular customers now, people who appreciated quality work. We'd even taken on an apprentice, a young man from Lincoln who wanted to learn the trade. I'd started guiding settlers through the mountains again, using my knowledge of the country to help families find their way safely. It felt right, helping people instead of hiding from them. And every month, I rode to that hillside where Ayana and Sage rested, brought flowers, told them about my life, about the people I'd helped, the things I'd built, the ways I was trying to honor their memory through living well. One October afternoon, exactly a year after the night I'd found Kiona hanging from that rope, I sat by my favorite spot near Sam's forge, a place where you could see 3 valleys converge, where the wind carried the smell of pine and distant snow. I was whittling, making a toy horse for Dylan's birthday. He'd be 13 soon, becoming a young man. My hands had learned to create small, beautiful things, not just tools and weapons. Sam joined me, carrying 2 cups of coffee. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the mountains orange and gold. "You know what day it is?" he asked finally. "I do. 1 year since everything changed. Seems like longer. Seems like a lifetime ago. Because you're a different man now than you were then." He was right. The man who'd cut that rope had been hollow, running on instinct and old honor. The man sitting here now was rebuilding, reconstructing himself from better materials. "You think we made a difference?" I asked. "Really made a lasting change?" Sam considered the question with his usual care. "Blackwell's dead. 15 other corrupt officers are in prison. The weapons trafficking is stopped. 3 reservations got their land rights restored. 20 families got justice they thought they'd never see." He sipped his coffee. "But more than that, we showed people that standing up matters. That one person with evidence can start an avalanche. That truth has power if you're brave enough to speak it. Kiona was the brave one. You all were. Her for stealing the ledgers. You for cutting the rope. Wade for making copies. Dylan for testifying against his father. Emily for organizing the townswomen. Me for, well, for finally doing something useful with my anger. And now? Now we live. We work. We help who we can help. We tell the story to anyone who'll listen.
We make sure Blackwell's crimes aren't forgotten, but also aren't the only thing that's remembered. Because the real story isn't about him. It's about everyone who stood up against him. The sun touched the horizon, that brief moment when the whole world seems dipped in honey. I thought about Ayana and Sage, about how they'd want me to live. Thought about Kiona in Santa Fe, healing people. About Dylan in school, learning to be the opposite of his father. About Wade, recovered now, training new sergeants to value honor over obedience. All these lives, changed and changing. All these ripples spreading out from one night, one storm, one rope. Sam? Yeah? Thank you for not letting me stay dead. He smiled. Thank you for giving me a reason to live again. We sat watching darkness claim the valleys, watching stars emerge one by one in the deepening blue. Somewhere in those mountains, my old cabin site was growing over with new pine and wildflowers. Somewhere, Kiona was studying anatomy and learning to bridge two medical traditions. Somewhere, Dylan was proving that sons don't have to follow their father's paths. And here, in this valley, two old men were teaching a young apprentice to shape metal into useful things. We're building a business and a life. We're choosing, every day, to care about the world and the people in it. I pulled out Sage's cloth doll from my pocket, looked at it in the fading light. Scorched, but whole. Damaged, but surviving. Like all of us. Tell me something, Sam said. If you could go back to that night, knowing everything you know now, knowing all the danger and pain and struggle that was coming, would you still cut that rope? I didn't have to think about it. Every time. I'd cut it every time. Why? Because 8 years of being dead was enough. Because Ayana and Sage didn't raise me to be the kind of man who walks away from someone who needs help. Because cutting that rope was the moment I chose to be human again. And was it worth it? All the fighting and fear and almost dying? I looked at the stars, at the peaceful valley, at my friend beside me, and the life we'd built from ashes and grief and stubborn hope. Sam, it was worth everything. We sat there until full dark, two men who'd survived their grief and come out the other side, changed, but whole. The wind moved through the pines, carrying the promise of winter and the assurance of spring beyond that. Everything cycled, everything continued, and somewhere in the darkness I could almost hear Ayana's voice and Sage's laughter, not haunting me, but blessing me, telling me that love doesn't end when people die. It changes form, becomes memory and motivation, and the strength to keep living well. I'd spent 8 years learning to die, spent one night learning to live again, and every day after that, I'd chosen life, chosen to care, chosen to stand up when standing up mattered. That was the legacy. Not revenge or violence or even justice, though justice mattered. The real legacy was simple. When you find someone hanging from a rope, you cut them down. When you see injustice, you speak up. When you have a choice between hiding and helping, you choose to help. That's what Kiona taught me. That's what we taught each other. That's what we'd teach anyone who'd listen. And in teaching it, we honored everyone we'd lost, turned their deaths into seeds for change, turned grief into gardens where new things could grow. I stood finally, stretched muscles that were older but stronger. Come on, let's go inside. I'll make us some of that stew Kiona taught me. You remember the recipe? Most of it. The part I forget We'll improvise." Sam laughed. "Story of our lives now. Remembering what matters. Improvising the rest." We walked toward the forge's warm glow, toward food and fellowship and another tomorrow. Behind us, the mountains stood eternal in starlight. Ahead of us, the future waited, uncertain but possible. And that was enough. After everything, that was more than enough. It was everything.